Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas podcast, where we embark on a journey through our diverse Texas landscapes and breathtaking trails while always engaging with our amazing Texas hiking community. So settle in, tighten up those bootlaces, and get ready for the thrilling tales awaiting for you on this episode. Welcome to the Trailblazing Texas podcast. Man, I'm really excited to have our next guest on the podcast, the Chuco Hiker. Dell, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, so I'm just going to jump right in. How in the heck did you get the name Chuco Hiker? What does Chuco mean first off? And then how did you get that name?
So you're not the first person to ask me this. I've had people ask me, not from El Paso, because Chuco really has a strong tie to El Paso, Texas, where I'm based out of. But I've had people say, is it Chuco Hiker or Chuco Hiker? And so the way the name came about is a nickname for El Paso is Chuco Town, or even El Chuco. So if you come here, there's a lot of Chuco whatever all around town.
And so what does Chuco mean?
That's a good question. I've tried to look into it. I've seen different explanations online. Some of it I think is urban legends. I haven't been able to totally verify it. But a common one I see, there is a relation to the word pachuco. And I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No.
Pachuco is, there's actually a really cool play called El Pachuco. And I'm pretty sure Edward J. Olmos is in it from of Battlestar Galactica and Stand to Deliver, that actor. And so like zoot suits, that old back in the day, the zoot suit riots, those are pachucos that wear that. I don't know if there's any relation between that and Chuco Town that's verified, but that comes up a lot when you read online.
Oh, okay. I'm going to have to look it up. That seems pretty interesting. So the Chuco Hiker comes because you're in El Paso.
Yeah, I'm here in El Paso, based out of here in far west Texas.
Yeah, and I learned that because in the original scheduling for the podcast, you said 5:30, and I showed up at my 5:30, but it was really 4:30 your time. And then I started like looking, and I'm like, oh, he's in El Paso.
Man, I feel so bad about that.
No.
Sorry.
It's what we were just talking about earlier. If you don't mess something up like I did, then you never learn, right?
It's funny, El Paso is so far out there in far west Texas. It's closer to state capitals and a bunch of other states, including states in Mexico, than it is to its own capital, Austin.
Yeah.
Texas is big. It's a big place.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So just to let the listeners know, like you're a Texas hiking YouTuber, Instagram, and I discovered your channel. God, it was probably right after you and Cameron did y'all's hike because I had saw his videos and then he referenced your channel. Then I started watching your stuff and really to the listeners. And the reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast is because you have a wonderful channel. You have a wonderful Instagram. The hikes that you post are, you can learn a lot from them, especially about the local area around El Paso and some of the other locations that are close by. And the photography is absolutely stunning of, some of your wildlife pictures. So I was like,
Well,
man,
thank
I
you.
have to have you on the podcast. So I definitely really appreciate you coming on. So I would definitely like to give you a few minutes if you just let the listeners know, how they can reach you, your channels, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, any of those things.
Sure. I think they can see my name on the screen. So right there, it's spelled Chuco Hiker, and that's
Mhm.
my tag on Instagram. That's my YouTube channel. That's pretty much the two main places I go. And then I have a website, chucohiker.com, where I try to put at least my favorite photos up there. And the content is really focused. It started as hiking, right? And what happened was, moving out here to El Paso, I've been here since 2008. And I would meet other people that move out here and they weren't, what's the word, excited to be here. And they felt like there's nothing to do. And there's nothing could be further from the truth. There's tons to do if you open your eyes. And I kind of started my channel to help to help inspire others to see what the city can do for them, in particular hiking, because that's what I like to do. So I said, what can I do to counteract the image? If you're watching movies and stuff, El Paso is often portrayed very negatively, like a little dusty border town or excessive violence, and it happens over and over again. It's actually a really cool town. It's not little, right? It's in the top 5 largest in Texas,
Yeah.
and it's like around number 20 in the whole country. So there's a lot of things to do here, and I like to focus on. I started as outdoor hiking, but over the past few years, I've gotten more and more into outdoor photography. So I include some of that in my channel as well. I'm still trying to figure out how to do photography stuff, but
That was what I was gonna ask is, like, what were some of your main goals, to start a YouTube channel, to start the Instagram? You know, I I like me starting this podcast, it took a lot. I know we've talked about, like, to have the idea, what can I offer to benefit our hiking community? Then I kind of went through this, wow, what I have to say, does, is it important? Would it make a difference? So
right.
yeah, it's and then also clicking the record button for the first time. I still get nervous. But yeah, so what I know you probably highlighted a little bit. What were some of your main goals, concerns when you started that channel?
Ooh, goals and concerns. All right, goals is easy. I kind of,
Yeah,
like you said, touched on it. I just wanted to showcase what El Paso has to offer, and hiking was the focus because that's something I like to do. And a lot of you'd be surprised how many people I've met out here. I do things with scouts. We take them camping in the Franklins, and parents who grew up here will say, "I didn't know you could camp here." Or you meet
really.
other people that, and you probably run into this there. Um, you run into people that say, "Wow, you go hiking? Isn't that dangerous? There's rattlesnakes, there's mountain lions, right?" And so
Uh,
I started out focusing
we
really
have
on
meth addicts.
right. The two-legged ones are scarier than the
Yeah, the
four-legged
two-legged
ones.
ones. Yep.
Um, so I started out really focused on day hikes around El Paso, and then maybe started doing multi-day trips. And my first video, so what's the concern? I don't know. Just will anyone watch you? Will anyone care? And then I realized I just have fun doing it. And so the first video I did was me and my wife in Guadalupe Mountains, and it's still up there when we did McKittrick Ridge. But what's funny is one of my main inspirations was in fact Cameron. You mentioned Cameron, and he was the first person to comment on one of my videos. And I was pretty giddy about that. I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
here's a dude who helped inspire me to do this." And he found my channel, and he commented on it, and then next thing you know, we've done trips together, and he's so cool. It
Yeah.
was a neat little trajectory to go on.
That's really cool.
Concerns?
Yeah.
You asked about concerns. One concern I have is, yeah, I'm not an expert at this stuff. I'm pretty average, so I'm worried people will see it and be like, "Oh, he's a poser," right? But I don't think I am. I'm just of average skill. I don't portray myself as anything more than that. And hopefully,
But I think that's what people love. And like also for us, we do it because we love and we want to try to educate and bring more people to our wonderful hobby. And if you listen to some of my podcasts, like I say and 1,000 times, and I just laugh and who cares? I do, I don't want to put pressure on myself or I think you're absolutely right. Kind of like we can't worry about that kind of stuff and let's just have fun with it.
right, that's what it ended up being. Although it does take me a lot of takes. That's one benefit I have. It's not a live format, right? I remember one time, it was actually, I have a video out there announcing the Texas YouTuber gathering for last year, and it's in Cloudcroft, and I'm drinking a I'm drinking a mug of coffee in front of the camera, and I did so many takes of that thing. It started out like sunrise and low light and a hot mug of coffee. By the end, the sun is way in the sky, and I have no coffee left, but I pretended to drink it because
No way.
yeah. So I'm like, oh, it's part of the shot now. I got to keep it in there. So I'm pretending to drink it and announcing the gathering. It was take after take. I had trouble getting through
Well,
it.
I can say like I've watched probably the majority of your videos and especially the photography and stuff. And I want to thank you for putting yourself out there for our hiking community, um, doing such a wonderful job that you've done. It's I think a lot of people can learn and get a lot from your content. So I,
Uh,
as a consumer of your content, thank you for again putting yourself out there and having a go at it.
for that, I thank you. I really appreciate it. That's humbling to hear. And I think for all of us, if you're a content creator of some sort, knowing that somebody else enjoys what you produce is very satisfying, right? It fills the soul, if you will. And hopefully, I'm reaching my goals and people get to see a nice positive side of El Paso.
Absolutely. And what's shocking for me, um, and when you're mentioning that, people didn't even realize about the hiking and the mountains surrounding the town or city. El Paso is world famous for bouldering and Waco tanks. And so, yeah, I mean, there should be a lot of activities for people to do in El Paso: hiking, climbing, definitely the outdoors.
Yeah, so Hueco Tanks is where I actually knew I was going to marry my wife. And the way that worked was we used to live in Austin and we were part of an indoor rock climbing gym there. And I go with a lot of friends here. They do scrambles and they all know I kind of get scared on scrambles. I am more hiker than climber. I'm
Yeah.
working on it. I'm trying to get better at it. Uh, but in Austin,
Exposure's a thing, man.
it is class 1, 2, whatever. But once it starts getting exposed and I can get hurt if I fall, I start getting heebie-jeebies. But
Yep.
I would do like V1s and twos in the Austin rock climbing gym. That tells you my skill level. I was proud of twos. I was not good, and had fun. And so we went to Hueco Tanks, and we were just dating at the time, and we were climbing, and I wasn't too high. My rear end might have been about 8 foot off the ground or so. So my head's maybe 10, 11 foot up, and I'm looking down, so you feel high. And the crash pad looks tiny. It's not like climbing in a gym, right? The crash pad gets real small real quick. And the rock exfoliated, and I was falling. And
Oh
if you,
man.
yeah, if you if you hike with me, or if you see my channel, you'll know I'm not a skinny guy. At this time I was like 250 pounds or so, and as I was falling, my wife, who weighed like 115, 120, I remember looking at her and she just braced herself and she didn't move. She kept me on the crash pad, right? And I remember
Are you
thinking that as I
kidding?
fell, I am not kidding. She kept me there, kept me on the crash pad, and I remember thinking as I was falling, I'm gonna marry her. That's when I knew. Um, yeah. So Waco takes is special to me.
Oh man, that's the greatest story. So
I
have
just watched her.
yeah, yeah, but she risked for you, so that should definitely tell you something.
Yeah.
So how long have you been hiking and backpacking?
Hiking, something I've done my whole life. My dad, being an army guy, liked to take us out in nature. So I grew up fishing a lot, day hiking a lot. We didn't do all that much camping. He'd said more to me more than once. He'd done enough of that in the army, right?
Yeah.
But liked to get us outdoors. So I did that. I lost touch with it a little bit. When I went overseas, my dad got stationed in Southeast Asia. And when we moved out there as my second high school, I kind of lost touch with being outdoors. And I came back to the States, went to college. It wasn't until I had kids of my own, you start wanting to do the things you did when you were a kid, right? And it
Yeah.
reconnected me with hiking and got them into scouts. And then backpacking, I just got into maybe 7, 8 years ago now. And the story there was my dad and I, he was in the Pentagon and he was planning to retire in Virginia. So he was gonna retire. I was gonna graduate high school. We'd do the Appalachian Trail. That was the plan.
Oh
Then he
wow.
took the gig overseas, and that plan just fell apart. After reconnecting with hiking and getting into scouts, turned out I had a lot of friends that was in the backpacking, and I thought, well, tell me more about this. I've been wanting to do this since I was a kid and never did it. And so, yeah, about 7, 8 years ago, got the got bit by the bug, and now it's probably one of my most favorite things to do. I just can't get out there that often.
So how often do you get out to the outdoors?
Well, day hikes I can get out pretty often. Backpacking, if I get 3 or 4 trips a year, that's amazing, and they're usually 1 or 2 nights tops. I just
Yeah.
kind of a weekend warrior with that. Some longer trips, but usually they're just 1 or 2 nights.
So for the day hiking, is it weekly, monthly, you think?
Depends what I got going on. Certainly, on average, multiple times a month I get out there. On
Yeah.
average, sometimes it's every other weekend. Sometimes it's every weekend. I got easy access to mountains here.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. So is there anything that inspires you to hike? Like, starting this podcast and being able to talk to a lot of different people so far, it's very interesting to understand or start to try to understand what gets people outdoors. Like for me, I'm 51 years old. My hiking season is from September 1st to probably the end of May if I can catch some cool days. And then I'm not going to be hiking in the summer. But
Mm.
like I find I have to challenge myself, whether it's multiple, like 30 miles on a day or a backpacking trip. I wish I could say it was to get rid of stress or that, but like for me, it's to try to challenge myself, and that kind of keeps me I'm usually out almost every weekend during hiking season because I'm about an hour away from both endpoints of the Lone Star Hiking Trail, which is they say is the
Oh,
longest trail in Texas. But what about you? So what inspires you to get out?
well, this is a loaded question for me. How deep do I want to go? And I say that because I was asked to do a little presentation on it once.
Hmm.
And I thought I was going to say, oh, to be outdoors and I love nature, which is true. All that is true.
Yeah.
And then I dug a little deeper and I realized I have some pretty deep reasons to do it. Or at least, I don't know, maybe listeners will hear it and be like, that's not deep at all. But um, I kind of narrowed it down to a few things. And then I'll segue into goals because I usually have a goal per hike, but the goals are all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Um, First and foremost, just to feel connected. I think you're 51. I'm right behind you, 45. So I'm at the tail end of Gen X. Maybe I'm Zennial or whatever. I
Yeah.
identify as Gen X. Um, we're super connected now, but we're also super disconnected, right? The smartphone is not a substitute for in-person community type relationships or activities, at least for me. And so when I hike, I find like even me and my sons don't say much. 10, 12, 15 miles on trail, we bond more than we would say sitting in the same room together. It's just something about the physical exertion, seeing and experiencing and smelling and going through all that together. I find it very bonding and it connects me to them. I think it connects me to myself. You've been there. Going up a
Yeah.
mountain sucks sometimes, right? and and you start talking to yourself or thinking about things. Why am I here? What am I doing?
Yeah,
And you
you're at
start closer.
Guadalupe. It's 19 degrees outside. It's 3 in the morning. I'm like, I could be home with my wife.
Right,
you know,
right.
like, what am I doing?
Like I just did a hike recently, and it was super short. It's right here in town, but this goes to kind of the goals we were mentioning. I get a little ADHD, so if I tend to squirrel moment here and there, it's going to happen on this chat. But we
Mm.
were going up, and I wanted to catch sunrise, and I wanted to try some neat techniques with the camera and capture sunrise all the way from dark to blue hour to golden hour and put it all in one photo. And I knew to do that, I had to be out of bed at 3 in the morning. And I knew if it was just me, I wouldn't do it. So I reached out to some friends that I thought would be crazy enough to get up at 3 with me. And I got one out of four. One, I approached four, one said yes. And I remember halfway up Sugarloaf Peak, and it's only about zero point 0.5, zero point 0.6 miles up. It's about a little over 900 feet elevation change. So it's steep in that half a mile. And I remember halfway up, and I said to my buddy, what the heck are we doing, man? Why couldn't I have picked Scenic Drive to do this? I could just drive there and get the same views. I'm so tired. And he goes, but where would the fun in that be? And I said, thank you. This is why we're friends. I needed that. You're right. Thank you. So that connecting thing, we bonded over that. And now we joke about it at work, and our other friends say we're crazy. Um, I think another reason it's a place where my mind gets quiet, right? Like at home with the day to day, I got three boys. Of course, the job. It's just nonstop, nonstop, go, 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 go. And out there, it's very pure. The way I've described it to other people, it's a purity of existence. If I'm hungry, I eat. If I'm thirsty, I drink. If I'm hot, I take off layers, right? If I'm cold, I put layers on.
Yeah.
If I'm tired, I take a break. It's very pure and in the moment. It's just like Zen to the extreme. It's a peace I can find that I have trouble finding otherwise. So there's that aspect of it, and yeah, I think that covers it really. It finds the
Yeah.
peace. You had mentioned challenging yourself. Um, Sometimes I do hikes like that. You know, I've done a couple mountain races, Franklin Mountains, or sometimes I just want to know, can I do that, right?
Yeah.
Other times I might have a goal, like with my buddy getting a sunrise picture. Um, a lot of times I have local friends that just want to get into hiking, and they say, "Take me out." I said, "Okay, let's go do something."
And when you have someone new and you take them out, do you think about their skill level and what they can do, or you just push them?
I do think about skill level because I don't want them to hate it. I want them to get
Yeah.
back out there. So, but I push them. I
Yeah.
push them, but I do think about skill level. So there's a couple local hikes that are short but have some elevation climb. And what I do, and it's actually, you mentioned it in one of the podcasts of yours I've listened to, which is listen to their breathing. You know,
Yep.
and if people hike with me, I get huffy puffy on the uphills, and people that haven't hiked with me before like worry about me. And I said, no, no, I'm huffy puffy. It's how I am.
Huh?
But I do the same for the newbies, and I listen to them, and I'm like, okay. And um, it's funny. The scoutmaster for my troop has picked up on some of my tricks when I take the kids out there and do it, and I see they're getting tired. I'll stop, and instead of like making a big deal about someone being tired, I'll educate them about the local geology that we're looking at or the history of the land. And my scoutmaster, he figured out what I was up to. But I try to do things like that just to keep it interesting, and that way they don't feel bad. You know, we're out there to have fun. It's not a race,
Yeah.
no competition.
Especially I think with young boys' egos, so you don't want to call them out. And I kind of do the same thing. I'll just say, oh, I'm going to stop and take pictures, and I don't want to. So I have a thing with I have 4 kids, a girl and 3 boys. And so when they turned
Wow,
16, I took them to Guadalupe, bought them a tent, a backpack. They check the weather, they pack their food, they pack their clothes, and it's just kind of like them coming into an adult. And I hiked the crap out of them. But,
nice.
like when they were dying, I didn't say like, "Oh, come on." I just said, "Oh, let me stop and I want to take some pictures." And because usually I can do a day hike and come back with about 200 pictures. I don't know how, but I love taking pictures. Yeah, so that I know what you mean, and when you have someone new, you definitely want to introduce them to the hobby that we love, and definitely don't want to break them.
Right, and I have people do that with me. I mentioned earlier. I got some friends that aren't scared to climb anything,
Yeah,
and I remember a good buddy of mine, actually the one who got up at 3 a.m. with me. He was so patient because there was a scrambling problem, and he did it in like 5 minutes, and it took me about 20, 25 minutes to work up the courage to like. I'm like, I don't even know where to start, dude. And he's really cool and patient, and now I can hit that problem no problem.
yeah,
But it's because he coached me through it and was supportive, And
yeah.
he could have been a jerk about it, and I'm glad he
I
wasn't.
I have 2 friends. I have a guy that I climb with. We climb 3 days a week for probably the last 3 years. Henning, he's been on the podcast. And he's that guy. Like when I have an adventure or a challenge, I'm like, hey, I want to do the quad. And he's like, what's that? I go, I want to hike from Guadalupe Peak to Shumard to Bartlett to Bush and back down. And it's all navigation and no trail. He's like, all right, who's driving, me or you?
That's hardcore.
and and I have another friend that I met at Guadalupe named Sam. He's a really good friend. He lives in New Mexico. So when we kind of get the guys together, we try to meet twice a year, or well, Henning and I go hiking a lot, but kind of like the guys, Henning and Sam, we'll try to go have a trip twice a year in October and February. Yeah, I just know with those guys, we're not always successful, which is it kind of makes it exciting. I don't know that you always want to be successful.
Right.
It keeps you coming back. But yeah, like Sam and I talking about like climbing, we went out and did the first time I met him, I just knew he was experienced. We had the same backpack, and his backpack was like way dirty. And like, oh, this guy's a dirtbagger. And he sure was living out of the car and just enjoying life. We did El Capitan Peak, because I was trying to do the 10 highest peaks in Texas, and that was like one of the last ones that I needed to do. So, you know, you hike to Guadalupe, drop down, hike out to El Cap, and then, you know, coming back up, we're going up this wash, and, you know, it starts out, you know, steep, and then it almost goes like straight up and down. And so before the straight up and down part, you know, I was like, hey, Sam, you know, we just need to be careful when we get to this bush. We need to cut over to this finger. And he's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm climbing up that wash and not realizing that I passed the bush, and I lose my footing on a foothold. And I'm like,
Ooh.
in my mind, I'm thinking, why am I like feel like I'm gonna slip? And I look down and I'm climbing up that
Ooh.
wash, and it's almost straight up and down. And you know, I go, Sam, and he looks back, he goes, oh, I think you passed the bush, because he had already moved over. And oh yeah, so that was talking about, you know, elevation and like puckering up, man. That was so I was like grabbing bushes and like slowly moving over back to that finger. But yeah, so I have a good group of guys that I hike with, and that, you know, we do some kind of crazy things. But yeah, we're I know that we'll also, like, if it's too crazy, we'll call each other out and say, yeah, we probably should turn back, or you know, stuff. So it's not
That's
too
good.
dangerous, but it's pushing my envelope. They're much more loving the exposure and some of the things that I'm like, no, 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 no. I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, exposure is. I'm getting heebie-jeebies just thinking about it.
and it's funny, John said, he's another good friend. He lives up in Washington. You know, this guy should be a guide, mountaineering guide. But, you know, we talked about exposure in the podcast, and he brought up a point, and I never really thought about it, but the elements around the exposure. So like the wind, you know,
Mhm.
the weather, you know, it can totally change your experience and the way you handle that exposure. And, you know, I never really thought about it, but there was, you know, the first time that I ever hiked Guadalupe Peak, you know, right when you're coming out of the crappy part, like the first 3/4 of a mile, you know, you have that little bitty bit of exposure. And normally it's like, it's no big deal. You just walk the 30 feet and you don't even worry about it. But it was so windy, you know, like the very first time we did it, it impacted me. I was like, oh crap, you know, like, and I'm like hugging the wall and walking. And then the next time I did the peak, there was no wind, and it was just kind of like just a normal walk. So yeah, it's exposure is a funny thing.
I think you're talking about that. It's like a hairpin turn, and it's all rock. It's like a drop right there, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's right when you're finishing kind of all the crappy hard part of the hike.
yeah, yeah. That's a fun hike. I haven't done the peak in years. I've been thinking about doing it again. I
I
find the other parts of the park more interesting.
You're absolutely right, and the only time I do the peak is if I'm bringing someone new to the park. Then of course you got to take them to do the peak. But yeah, I haven't. I don't know that I've hiked that front part of the park in I've just hit my 18th trip to the park, and
Wow.
I'm the bowl, way back past the bowl, Dog Canyon. So yeah, I'm out there and usually not seeing anybody. So yeah, I'm not at the Pine Spring kind of trails too often.
It's too many people there. Although
Oh
they're all
yeah.
going to the peak, it seems like I only did it once, and it was real nice. And me and my son didn't see anybody. The Salt Basin Overlook and El Capitan Trail out there.
El
And
Capitan Trail is my favorite trail in the park.
yeah, I haven't done it all the way around the corner. I turned at the Salt Basin Overlook.
Oh,
So
that's the only trail in the park that broke me. So we hiked the El
ooh,
Capitan Trail around El Cap and then headed to Shoemart campsite. And you know, once you round the corner, that you lose there is no trail. It's just you're just walking on rock. It's like a big rock slide, and
okay.
probably about, golly, maybe 2 or 3 tenths of a mile. And then you start going up and down Shoemart Canyon, and we got cliffed out twice. We lost the trail bazillion times. It's so overgrown. and the exposure is not too bad, but when you can't see where you're placing your feet, the exposure sucks. And when we started that hike, we started it late. Usually we're starting hikes about 3 a.m, and we started probably about 7 or 8. We were cocky, like, oh, this is going to be an easy hike. It's 9 miles. We didn't get to Shoemart until dark, setting up the tents. And I told the guys, I go, I'm not hiking that hike back to Pine Springs. I'm going to hike the 10 miles out to the highway and hitchhike. And they're like,
Wow.
yeah, Sam, he did the PCT, so he's a pro at hitchhiking. Henning was in the Marines, so I wasn't, from a safety aspect, I wasn't worried. And yeah, we hiked 10 miles. They all agreed. They said, yeah, we're not going back on that trail.
Was that
We
bad?
yeah, it's just, overgrown, and then the mental, it broke me. So yeah, we hiked the 10 miles, got to the highway, and it took us about 45 minutes on the highway. No water. We've run out to get back to Pine Springs, but a guy picked us up, so we made it. And then my wife saw the pictures and she's like, what are you doing in the back of this truck? I go, oh, we hitchhiked. Oh yeah. She wasn't happy either when I got home. So
Oh, I think I heard her talking about this on your first episode.
yeah, she was pretty pissed. Yep.
You guys bonded over that, I bet.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So kind of moving forward, what is hiking, backpacking? What does it mean to you? And I know you kind of talked about bringing you closer to your family, getting the boys out. What if you couldn't hike or backpack?
So this is a question I've kind of dealt with recently. Just mid 40s. I don't have any major injuries, nothing major at all.
Yeah.
But recurring tendonitis, I do have a ruptured disc. I do have a small tear in my knee. And when they act up, right, you start thinking, oh man, is this it? This is the biggest joy in my life, other than, my family, is getting out there, taking those photos. And I don't know. I don't even want to think or entertain that question.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to answer that. What if I couldn't do it? I mean, life goes on. You figure out things to do, and maybe tone it back, find other ways to be outdoors.
Yeah.
But I don't think anything would truly fill the gap that would leave.
I always think about that when I'm at Guadalupe. It's my favorite place on earth. And I don't know if you've listened to any of the podcasts, I can't stop talking about it. But
sure,
every time I'm sitting there, like I go visit Jose's grave and I hang out with him for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. And I'm looking up at El Cap and I'm just thinking, like, one of these days, and I'm not going to realize it probably, that this will be my last trip to Guadalupe Mountains.
Oh,
and then I'm just like, and I've spilt so many tears, so much blood in that park. It really hits me that one day, I hope that it's one day that I know, like, okay, I'm 80 and I can't hike anymore and take a trip and just kind of reminisce. But like, there's a really good chance that I'm going to go to the park and I'm going to leave the park, and me not knowing that'll be the last time that I'll have spent time at Guadalupe. And it actually kind of gets me emotional. I'm hanging out with Jose and I'm just thinking, and yeah, it so I think about that a lot. Not so much about not being able to hike or backpack anymore, but just my trips to the park really gets me thinking.
Sure. I mean, thanks for sharing that. It kind of goes back to what I said earlier about connecting with yourself, right? You get, especially if you're by yourself out there, I think you get, at least I do, get pretty introspective. But yeah, that's like anything else in life. It could be the last. It reminds me of something a friend of mine told me. When you leave home, at that point, you're only going to see your parents X number of times.
Yeah.
And you don't know when the last time's going to be.
And that number is shocking how low it is.
Right.
Like, right. I either saw a post or a video about something like that, and it's like, the guy did the study, and it's like, you're like, what?
They're there every day, every hour of your life, and all of a sudden, yeah, it's interesting. that's the journey we're all on in life, though. And you gotta. Tomorrow's never guaranteed, and what you can do tomorrow is never guaranteed. So do what you can today, right?
Yeah. And so do you prepare yourself that what's my next thing if hiking and backpacking I can't do that anymore?
I have joked with my wife about astrophotography. When I can't do big miles anymore, or at least big miles for me, I'll start buying the gear that I don't want to buy and hike around with. Like astro trackers and telescopes, stuff like that. But I don't know if I'd really do that. That's my joke.
Yeah, and but like, and to the listeners, I hope that you go check out the YouTube, the website, because the pictures, uh, Dell, that you've taken, the ones that I've seen are spectacular, and
Oh, thank you,
so it is well worth to check it out because you back some really really beautiful photos.
thank you, thank you. I don't know how to make photography videos yet. I'm still trying to figure that out. Like I think I have a good formula for trail overviews, and that's about it.
Yeah,
It's part of the fun I'm having on YouTube is and getting comfortable, right? I don't know how you are. I feel like a bit of a imposter syndrome at times. There's so much I don't know, and I'm still trying to learn. And if you watch my videos, I never pass myself off as an expert in any way because I don't think I am. I consider
yeah.
myself of average hiking and backpacking capability. I'm just trying to share my experiences out there. That's my big goal.
And that's all we can do. Like this podcasting, I woke up one morning and told my wife, "Yeah, I think I want to start a podcast." And she's like, "What?" She goes, "You can barely spell podcast." And and I think all we can do is have fun with it. I think if we went into it not trying to make money and not doing it for the love of it and sharing our experiences, listening to stories, sharing your photography, sharing your thoughts, sharing my thoughts. Like if we went in it just to try to make money, yeah, I mean, it would be horrible. But like if I make a dollar, who cares? Like I'm donating it to Guadalupe Mountains. If
That's really cool,
like
by the way, that you do
yeah,
that.
so I'm doing it because I get people like you on the podcast and I can hear stories and we can share stories. And is the podcast perfect? No, I don't want it to be perfect. When I talk, I'm and it's okay. It is what it is, and we're gonna move on. But yeah, we have to do this. It should never we should it should never feel like a job to us, right? It should just be because we love it.
I think people can sense disingenuity. I can't even say the word disingenuity. You know what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Insincerity. There's a word I can say.
Yeah.
Um, People can sense it, and I know there's certain channels that I don't watch because I feel like they're in it for what you described to make money and not for the love of it, and that's cool. They got big
Hey,
followings, people like that. That's great, good for them. But
it's like in the hiking world that we live in. Hike your hike. If that's what you want to do, have at it.
right, exactly,
You know?
but not for me. I mean, this is something that we got to squeeze in our spare time, and so to do that, I got to do it the way I want to do it, my terms, and have it fun. If that means my videos aren't that great, that's cool. I enjoy them. I don't know. Do you go
I
listen to
enjoy
the?
them.
Oh, thank you. My wife makes fun of me sometimes because she'll catch me just kind of rewatching a lot of them. A lot of it's just about reliving the experience, being out
Yeah.
there because I can't be out there. I'm stuck in the house. So let me get back
Yeah.
out there for YouTube.
So I have for the podcast and me personally, I have like, Instagram or TikTok, and I'll be sitting there on the bed just dying laughing at TikToks that I make, and I think they're funny. And I don't care if anybody else doesn't think they're funny, but yeah. So she's she's like, "What are you doing? Why are you laughing? What do you watch?" I go, "I'm watching my TikTok." She's like, "Oh God." But yeah.
Well, you're
So
doing it right then.
yeah, yeah. I'm finding humor in it, and it's something that gets me outdoors. So it's a lot of fun. So if you look at, I don't know, over the last couple years, most of your hiking, do you find yourself solo? Is it usually with just friends, family? What are the majority of your hikes?
It's probably a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Um, it's a mixed bag. So I may have, like I signed up for a mountain race earlier this year, and
What does
I
that
hadn't been
mean, like a
training.
mountain race?
There's It's like a trail run race.
Okay.
Franklin Mountains. There's one there every year, or has been for the last few years. And I use the word race very loosely. I am hiking most of it. I don't run
Hmm.
up hills. I'll jog the flats till I'm tired, and I'll
Yeah.
jog the downhills unless they're too much of a downhill, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I've done it twice, so it's not like I'm super elite or anything. I'm not, but it was a challenge I had for myself, and I finished both times near the end. I think I did one ultra marathon, and in the world of ultra marathons, it's a 50K, so it's barely an ultra marathon, right? It's like a little baby one, but it ended up being about 36 miles with 7,000 foot elevation change, which for me is a tall order, and I finished 10th from last, well in the dark, but that's okay. It was about finishing.
Was it
So when
fun?
yes, so I got story. How much of that story do I want to tell? I'll just say yes. It was fun. It was fun.
No, no,
Hiking's
you gotta,
fun.
you
It's a
can't,
good
you
stretch
can't.
of it.
If there's a story, we got to have it on the podcast.
I'll share it, but it gets into. All right, I'll share it. If you need to censor this, you can censor it as much as you need to. So, I had a good run training for that one. This was like in 2021, I think, or one or two. I think 21, and I did it right. I did the training. I started like a couch to 20 or couch to 10K program, and then I started looking up trail runners that do more. So I was following the program. I was doing good. I'd put in a good 6, 7 months of training leading up to it. And for that stuff, I'm usually solo because it's really goal oriented. And there's a pace I want to hit, and no problems. And I peaked the training with a 25 mile. I took a day off of work, and spent it running around in the desert for 25 miles and around the mountains. And I remember
Jeez.
at one point, you get, or at least me, I should say it was everybody, I get a little delirious. Like near the end, I'm tired, and I start like picturing myself on the race, right? And then for this particular day, that 25-mile one, I knew it'd be dark by the time I got to that point in the race because I was only doing the back half. I didn't do the first part where I involved the peak. So I imagined being in the dark, and then I imagined pairing up with a friend in the dark to keep each other motivated to get through the dark. And then I don't know why I went there. Then I imagined us fighting over which way to go. And I was like, dude, I live here. I know my way around these mountains. You really should go my way. And he's like, no, man, I totally know what I'm doing. And he goes his way. And I was like, whatever. And I was like, contrived these little situations to get me through the rest of the day. And then I remember I got to my car. It was outside Franklin Mountain State Park. And I was tired, like covered in salt from the sweat. And some guy pulls up with mountain bikes and he goes, hey, where's the trail? And I'm tired and trying to figure out. I go, I don't know what you mean. Where's the trail? Because there's like 100 miles of trails out here, right? Like,
Right.
and he's like, where's the trail? Where's everybody go? Where's the trail? Like real aggressive towards me, and I was like, dude, there's like 100 miles of trail out here, man, tens of thousands of acres. And in my mind, I'm like, it's not my fault you didn't do the homework before you came out here. But I just pointed around. I said, there's all these trails in this area. This area, the park was already closed. Um, I just remember kind of laughing about that. Like here
And
I
so
am coming out. Or go ahead.
no, he showed up and like I was going to do night riding.
No. This was during the training run, so there was
Oh,
still
okay,
daylight.
okay. Oh, okay,
Um,
okay, okay.
but he was really angry with me because I didn't know how to answer his question, and I thought that was funny in my mind.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm being polite about it, but I was like, dude, you asking me for a question, and then you get mad at me, and I'm like half delirious from just doing 25 miles around, the mountain. But
Say I'm
then
tired. I don't got time for your shit.
I didn't say that, but I did say I just did 25 miles, dude. I'm not sure what you're asking, but there's trails all over here. You can find trailheads all over. So hopefully I don't sound like a jerk to the audience with that story, but I just remember laughing at the absurdity of it. But come
No,
race
no,
day
no.
night,
Hey,
so,
that
go
guy
ahead.
should have an app. He should have a map. He shouldn't
Right?
rely on you
Should have had a plan,
to totally direct him on what he should be doing.
especially out here.
Hey, you hike out, where you're at. It's no joke. Or you
Um,
get out in the elements. I mean, people
but
die every year out in the desert. Big Bend,
They do.
Guadalupe.
Even the Franklins.
Yeah.
So so back to the funny part of the story where you may have to censor it. I don't know. Come race day.
Mm-hmm.
One thing about my body, it's very regular, right? It likes to go to the bathroom at 6
Yep.
a.m. every day, like clockwork, right? But I gotta get
Preach.
it's like clockwork. So I gotta get up at 3 because I need to get to the race. I wasn't sure what parking would be like. I wanted to make sure I got a good spot so I wouldn't have to take the bus shuttles everywhere. And I did all the calculations. Like I gotta get up at 3, And so I get up at 3, and I tried to force my body to get off the clock, but it doesn't get off the clock, right?
It
So
doesn't, especially at our age.
right, it knows what it wants to do. I'm like, man,
You
and of course
pack a wag bag and let's go.
well, the race started a little after 6 for me. I think it was 6:30, but I needed time to get there, park, whatever it was. Anyway, I usually use like Body Glide or something down in the sweaty bits for
Mm-hmm.
those kind of long days. But I got my hands on some of that Squirrel's nut butter, which is the best product name ever. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I've never heard of that.
It's basically made out of like almond butter or something, but it's the same thing as Body Glide. You rub it in those places to keep it going. And one little application, I was good for all 36 miles. But
Huh.
I'm up at 3 a.m. I'm trying to use the bathroom. I can't use the bathroom. So then I like, okay, whatever. And I put the Squirrel's nut butter where it needs to go, get on my gear. I'm walking out the door. And as I walk out the door, my body's like, yoo-hoo, that thing you just tried to do, I'm ready now. Right. So
Yep.
I go in there, I go to the bathroom, and I have a weird sense of humor, but I remember sitting down and, it was very little production. It was a lot of effort for little production, but I did what I did. I was cleaning up and I was getting stuff as well as the Squirrel's nut butter on there, which was just, I found hilarious because it was a weird mix of materials.
Oh, and now you're taking off all the nut
Yeah.
butter.
So now I got to reapply. And then
Uh,
but I didn't really get to go, right? So I get to the place and I got the last parking spot in the regular area. So I didn't need the shuttle. It's like, all right, that's good. And now it's getting closer to my normal production time. And so I really have to go to the bathroom. And I go into the porta potty and it's dark outside. There's a line outside the porta potty. And I remember
oh.
sitting down and I'm greeted with this unholy mixture of smells of porta potty smell and peanut butter from the almond butter from the Squirrel's nut butter. It smells like peanut butter. And everything I went through at this point, I just remember just laughing out loud. And I'm sure people outside of the porta potty were like, "What is wrong with this guy?" Just
Hurry up, we got to go too.
yeah, but it was funny, And then I had to go reapply again. But no, the race went fine. I but I had problems I didn't have in training. So the 25-mile training run, that was my peak training run. No blisters, no nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But that day, 5 miles in, I'm starting to get hot spots. I'm like, what is going on?
Did you
And then I start getting
did you
cramps.
have different socks, shoes?
No, nothing new on race day. Everything
Oh,
was stuff I trained in. So I don't know what happened. And and then I was cramping, and I think part of that was not resting well. I had trouble sleeping because I was nervous about the race.
yeah.
But I got cramps maybe 9, 10 miles in, and since this was in my backyard, I knew this course pretty well, and I knew I just had to get to the peak. Once I got to North Franklin Peak, it was downhill from there, figuratively and
Yeah.
literally. And so I was pushing, but on the way up, I cramped so bad, like everything, hamstrings, quads, calf.
Jeez.
I sit down. I'm only like a mile or two from the top, and I just sit down and just take a break, drink some water. There's a thing called Tailwind. It's a nice drink. It's formulated to give you some calories and electrolytes for long
Mm-hmm.
days like that. I don't use it hiking, but I do for the trail races and the trail runs. And I was sipping on my Tailwind, and this guy who could best be described as Mr. Magoo, if you're old enough to remember him. Mr. Magoo. I mean, this dude, he was older, and he was going up that mountain just at this old man shuffle pace, and he sees me sitting on the ground, and he goes, "You just got to keep on moving, get that pace, and keep on moving." And he kept on moving up to the top, and I was like, "Man, that guy's a badass. He's amazing." And there's also a bunch of just everybody was amazing passing me, but I mentioned him in particular because I ended up catching up to him later, and he was in his 70s. He's doing ultra marathon in his 70s all that elevation change, and the Franklin Mountains aren't flat dirt trails. It's steep, loose
Right.
rock everywhere, like hiking in Big Bend or Guadalupe's. So I caught up to him, and we actually became friends, and we kept each other company for about, I don't know, 7 to 10 miles, just trading stories. And I remember laughing because he told me he's really good at this now because he didn't do anything when he was younger. He just ate junk food, so he's well preserved from all the preservatives, which just cracked me up. And I had a goal. I just wanted to finish in 15 hours, and I finished in 15 and a half. And I could have done it in 15, but I didn't want to leave Gary because there was a stretch of trail, and he had trouble seeing in the dark, and it was confusing,
Mm,
you know. And
yeah.
so I just hung with Gary and had a good old time with him.
That's what
Um,
it's about.
yeah, yeah. And then we went our different ways at some point. I suspect he had to use the bathroom and just wanted me to keep going, and I insisted on waiting for him. He's like, no, you go, you go. So I waited at
Yeah.
the finish line for him. And then I ran to another guy. This is probably a boring part of the story now, but I'm going to share it 'cause I'm near the finish. And
Hey, this podcast is about our stories. Not one of them is boring.
cool. Well, thank you for that. So this guy, I had named him Eric the Red, like the Viking. I didn't know
Yeah.
his name, but we kept passing each other in the trailer, and he was really tall and had this huge red beard. He's a redheaded guy, and he saw me. The last he saw me was when I was cramping and sitting down, and he was already going down. And so when he saw me catching up to him in the dark, he was like, "You?" And I could barely see him in the dark through at that first moment. And I was like, "Eric the Red?" And I was like, "Oh, sorry, that's my name for you. I named you in my head." And so he was dragging at that point, but I had found my second wind, and so we bonded, and we did the last like 3 miles together, pulling each other across the finish line, and that was really cool. So
And I've I've had a lot of hobbies in my life. And I don't know if you listened to episode 1 with my wife, and this this room has been everything you can imagine. And our hiking community, and like, okay, it's not racing and stuff, but the racing community, like, it's amazing what wonderful people that you meet.
yeah,
And it doesn't matter, like, you can be backpacking, you meet I don't know, a lawyer, a doctor, a dentist, a guy who fixed flat tires, like, you all walks of life, and you can sit around a fire, you can push each other, you can support each other. No one gives a crap about who you are, what you do, what political beliefs you have. It's just you're a human, I'm a human, and we're gonna be there for each other.
there's nothing but real out there. It goes back to that connecting, right?
Yeah,
And there's nothing but real. There's no real room to be caught up
anything
in stuff that
other.
doesn't matter, right?
Yep,
So
absolutely.
the channel's been really cool because it's gotten me to meet other Texas-based backpacking YouTubers, right? And tying into what you said, we've done 3 outings now. Like we try to do a trip once a year, and it's open to anyone who has a channel and has Texas-based outdoor content, right? Like come join us. And if you know Cameron, his channel used to be Ultralight Outdoors. It's Cameron Hall now. Has been he kind of got that all started and going, and I'm glad he did because just like you just said, every one of them that we've met, super cool. I've not had a problem. They're all as cool as they seem to be in their videos.
So you guys accept podcasters?
Yes, I'm sure we would say, come on board, come on board.
I'll definitely have to be looking out for that.
This year's is still, the plan is still in the works. Cameron's taken, I think he's taken the lead again, but me and a couple others have offered to help, and
Nice.
it's a lot of fun. The formula we've come up with is first night everyone's driving in from all over Texas, so everyone's coming at different times. So first
Hmm.
night is usually front country camping with a lot of whiskey, and then the next night we usually try to hike into a backcountry site somewhere, and we're all got our cameras and stuff doing content and having a good old
Nice. Yeah, I think I've seen some of those videos. It looks like a whole lot of fun. I didn't know you guys would accept podcasters, but
Hey, it's content and it's Texas based.
I hear you.
I'm sure we
All
can make
right.
it.
Um, it's it's funny that you were sharing the stories that you were before, and to the listeners that haven't really got into hiking and backpacking, if you are with your friends, family, you are going to share some maybe embarrassing moments at first, and then over time you get used to it. Like with Sam, I was heading out to Colorado, and he drove in from New Mexico to Colorado. We're on Grays. We did Grays and Torrey, so it's two 14,000-foot peaks that are kind of connected to each
Nice.
other. And we're on Grays, and he's like, "Man, do you have that wag back?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Oh, I gotta go." So you're above tree line. It's just a trail, snow, rock, and other hikers. There's no, you can't hide behind anything. You can't like, there's no, you're just there.
Right.
And so, so he actually kind of went off trail and then hiked through the snow on this very steep, like if he would have slipped, he would have been off the mountain, but hiked around and Henning, I've ran into him using the restroom, I don't know, a bazillion times. Like when you get into this hobby, you are going to be, and especially if you're mountaineering and you're crossing glaciers and you're roped in together, like there's going to be times where, things are going to happen and probably if you're not used to it, you're going to be kind of embarrassed, but it happens.
Par for the course. Par for the course. In one of your episodes, you talked about being kind of new when you hit Guadalupe Peak, right? You had no experience,
Mm-hmm.
no nothing. And then I hear you describe later on that podcast I'm talking to you now. You've done some pretty awesome stuff. Like I haven't even hit up Shumard and Bartlett yet. I've just done of the four you named in that quad. I've just done Bush and Guadalupe Peak. So
Yeah. And it
impressive.
goes back to just thinking about some cool things and how I can challenge myself. I finally, so it took me a while. Like, there was a few times that I tried to do this, tried to do that, and you meet people and, they're like either not in shape or they don't really have the expertise. So you could really put yourself into some dangerous situations. So we've said, yeah, we're not going to do this or whatever. But I finally have what I would consider the A team. So Henning and Sam, they're very experienced. And yeah, we've done some pretty incredible things. I have my friend out in Washington. So when I head out there, he's teaching me all this mountaineering stuff. And so, we're playing around on Rainier. Haven't summited Rainier, but it's snow and learning to step, crampons, ice axe. And so, yeah, I
Wow.
mean, it's been over the last 10 years, it's been a lot of fun. I've shed some tears, blood, probably way more failures than successes, but it's been just an amazing ride. Does your wife hike with you or backpack?
Yes and no. She'll
Yeah.
hike with me. She likes to be outdoors.
Does she have rules?
Yes, maybe stricter than your wife because I heard her go through hers. Um,
Yeah, you heard that?
I did. I did. Uh, and I respect it. My wife, she will day hike and challenge herself, but I
Nice.
understand wanting to be in a bed at night where it's nice and warm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so one Father's Day, I said, the only gift I want is for you to go backpack with me. Let's go. Let's do that. And this actually is my oldest video on the channel. There's so many things I would do differently in terms of video making, but at the same time, I kind of like how raw and crappy it is. It's just fun. But I was like, well, it's your first. This is where I learned not to make people hate a hobby, but I learned it after, and so I was like, I'm gonna get her out there, and I'm gonna make it super memorable and super beautiful. We're gonna do McKittrick Ridge in Guadalupe Mountain.
Oh man, on her first hike or
Yeah,
first backpacking trip.
yeah, yeah. That was not a smooth move.
So
But
she was probably cool until you got to the notch, and then after the notch, she was probably cussing you.
yes, all the above. Especially when I misread the topo and where we were at, and so I told her we were a lot closer than we were. And then I was like,
Oh,
wow, we should have got to our campsite. Let me readjust. I think I misread the map, and I looked at it again. I was like, oh yeah, we're still a couple miles out, and the sun was getting low.
oh,
So
oh.
yeah, she hasn't been out since.
I
So
need to bring her on the. She needs to come on the podcast and tell that story.
but no, she did it. You know, she did it with me, and for that I'm eternally grateful.
That's
And
incredible for her first backpacking trip to get out to McKittrick.
yep, yep, she's got grit. She definitely has grit.
Wow. That's awesome.
She said, I think some of the trauma is worn off. She's gone from saying straight out no to me when I ask her about it to maybe. And
Okay.
then rules matter at this point, right?
So when you go on your trips, and let's say if you're going solo or with the boys, does she worry that when you're gone? And like, do you kind of like what y'all's, you let her know what days, what hikes, when you should be starting the hike, when you should be ending the hike, and that sort of things?
Yes, so I'm big on that for
Mhm.
safety reasons. They need to know where you are because if something happens, and especially when you're solo, there's sort of a
Mhm.
refrain in the back of my mind, which is double check your decisions, before you do something, because help could be hours or even over a day away, right? And
Right.
so I let her know, here's where I'm going, when to expect me home. And then I also have I got an in reach eventually. I just read about one too many people dying out there where if they had a way to communicate, they might have been okay. And so the rule is, let's say it's a multi-day trip. The rule is I will send a message when I wake up, at lunch, when I set up camp, and when I go to bed.
Mhm.
And if I miss one, don't freak out yet. But if I miss two, start to worry.
Yeah.
And of course, they can follow you in real time also with the map link that Reach gives you. So shameless plug for Garmin. I'm not sponsored, but I really like their product. It's been really good at mitigating concern.
I had on the podcast, I think it's episode 11 and 12, Mr. Barry. So he was lost at Guadalupe Mountains for 5 days, had no food or water for 4 days. And,
Wow.
he was found, and I had him on the podcast. And the first thing he bought after his rescue was a Garmin and a cell phone charger.
Yeah, who would it after that? I remember when he was first reported missing, and I thought, and I think they listed his age too, if I recall, and I was like, oh man, that guy,
Yeah.
he's dead. And then they
Yep.
found him, and I was like, wow, what a story. What a
Yeah.
story.
And, oh, yeah. So I was, he came on the podcast, and, I talked to him still, probably once every couple of weeks just to check in. And I don't know when, maybe September, October, he's going to repeat that hike. And so I'm going to go with him. And
Oh,
there's his
cool.
family, his kids and stuff. So it should be a fun time.
That's awesome.
And I'm also putting together, and the reason why I ask about your wife and when you're going, I'm also putting together an episode with all my friends who we go hiking, and kind of like when we leave, and we put, like, for me, like, I think sometimes I have selfish, like, oh, I want to do this, and I don't think the impact that it has on the family or my wife, having to take care of everything, around the house for the 3 or 4 days or 5 days that I'm gone, her worrying, like, where am I? I have an inReach. We try to, like, stay in contact, but there's some times where when we did the quad, we left at 3 in the morning and we didn't get back till like 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And, she was worrying. They were, if they didn't hear back from me by X amount of, maybe in another hour, they were going to start, okay, what do we need to do? And so anyway, so the point is I'm putting together a podcast for all the wives of all of us that go hiking, and kind of like, looking at it from their perspective.
Wow.
So you should tell your wife if she wants to be part of it to let you know, to let me know.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that. Yeah, I can't. I can't say if she'll do it or not, but that'd be cool if she.
No. I
She
mean,
did it.
yeah. I mean, we have I think 4 right now. So yeah, I mean, she's more than welcome because I think it would be an interesting episode to see it from their point of view, and taking care of the house, the safety aspect, worrying about us while we're, like, I don't know, reliving
Adventuring.
our youth. Yeah. But yeah, so
Right.
just let her know.
Yeah, I will. I'll definitely do that. That'd be kind of cool experience. I've
So
actually had search and rescue called on me before, but I didn't need
really,
it. I didn't need it. It was an in town, just a humorous thing that happened. It was that short hike I told you about. It's called Sugarloaf Mountain here in El Paso, just a
hmm
half mile in. And I wanted sunset pictures. This was a goal oriented hike. And we were racing up to the top. And I got some pretty cool blue hour pictures, if I say so myself. I was real excited about them. And it was me and 2 friends. And as we were hiking down, I remember seeing the trailhead is near what's called McKelligan Canyon here. And McKelligan Canyon is the trailhead for another trail run, Coleman Trail, which is often billed by Franklin Mountain State Park as the hardest trail in the park. I think there's some harder ones, but it's up there. It's a fun one.
yeah.
And also that canyon is just fun for people exercising. It's like a big long road, so a lot of people jog there. So we were going down, and I saw emergency vehicles start going down that road, and I said to my buddies, "Oh crap, someone's getting rescued!" And
Oh
one of them
no.
goes, "I think they're here for us." I'm like, "No way!" And then I realized there were no other cars down there because it was already dark. They were there for us, and it was a couple fire trucks, some police. And as we were hiking down in the dark, they got on the bullhorn, and at some point we were close enough where they could hear us, or we could hear them rather, and they were yelling at us, "If you need help, flash your lights. If you need help, flash your light." Well, we didn't need help, so we didn't flash our lights. So any of you guys that are search and rescue out there, that's not the right message to ask. Say flash once or flash twice, so that we could tell you, twice means we're good. So they just kept blaring that out loud, and then me and my buddies were like, "Oh man, are we going to pay for this? Are we going to be on the hook for search and rescue? We're just fine." And I think eventually they figured out we were fine. They just left one fire truck there. They told us some good Samaritans in the area. This mountain's right in town. Saw our lights up there and thought we needed help, and they got 2 or 3 calls. So they were sent out to check on us. And I have a friend
Wow.
with the fire department, and I think this is the right price. He said it's like $700+ per fire truck mobilized for search and rescue, at least
And
here.
but for you, like, you didn't call it, so you're not on the hook for that, are you? Or were you?
We were not on the hook, but there was a point where line of sight was broken between us and them, and we were like half jokingly, "Should we make a break for it? Because we don't have to
Man.
pay for this." So no, we didn't have to pay anything. We were fine. And if it's on the other side of the state line, though, New Mexico search and rescue, at least for my friends that actually know people rescued by it, was covered by the state. So
Oh, okay.
if I'm gonna get lost, I got to do it in New Mexico, not Texas.
Or you have to make a large donation to the fire department.
Right, right. So yeah, that was a
So,
funny day.
what is your favorite state park and your favorite national park in Texas? And that wraps up another exciting episode of the Trailblazing Texas podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode today, and stay tuned for our next episode where we will pick back up where we left off and guarantee to uncover many more hiking gems and share many more tips to enhance your experience on the trail. Until then, happy trails and happy hiking.